Going from being a skinny fat Asian guy to being a lean Asian guy has nothing to do with your metabolism or your genetics, and it has everything to do with your lifestyle factors. My name is Dan, and after helping over 300 busy Asian men get lean, lose belly fat, get in the best shape of their lives, there's a couple common mistakes that I see with Asian guys that end up skinny fat. And on the flip side, there's also a couple very simple changes that you can make to your lifestyle, to your eating habits, to your routines that can help you go from skinny fat to lean with less effort and time than you might expect, especially if you're someone who's got a busy, demanding work schedule, family obligations, things like that, right? Family dinners, dim sum Sundays as Asians, those are all part of it, right? And so the good news is that like the generic advice you see online that feels like it takes up a ton of time, feels like it's going to be very restrictive, isn't something you have to do. Okay, and I'm going to walk you through first off like what the mistakes are, and then the changes you can make to solve those things, right? And so before we get into that though, like first off, what is skinny fat and why is it a bad thing, right? Most Asian guys who are skinny fat or who identify as skinny fat would describe their physique as skinny, right? Not a ton of muscle definition, not a ton of muscle tone, but they have a lot of belly fat and fat accumulated around their midsection. The love handles, whatever you want to call it, right? And so you look skinny on the outside, you don't look overweight, you don't look like you're super big on the outside, but underneath there's a lot of belly fat there. Now, the reason that can be problematic is for a couple reasons. Number one is metabolically, it can cause a lot of issues, right? If you look skinny fat, chances are you have a decent amount of what's called visceral fat accumulated around your organs, your liver, your kidneys, etc., right? And having fat accumulated around your organs can cause a lot of inflammation and cause a lot of health issues like insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, all sorts of health issues that can stem from that, right? Which is why you probably hear people talk about visceral fat all the time and how you should get rid of it, okay? And side note too, you can't necessarily target visceral fat, but you can lose fat overall and eventually you get rid of that visceral fat. So that's the one thing, right? The second thing, I guess, is more along the lines of aesthetics, where, because you don't have that muscle tone, right? You're not going to look lean, but you also have the extra body fat that feels very stubborn to get rid of. And that's a common thing that I see with a lot of Asian guys who come to me is they they might lose weight, they might see the scale drop, but for some reason they can't seem to get rid of that fat around their midsection. Okay. Now, why do we want to shift from being skinny fat to lean? Aside from the look side of it, getting lean and losing body fat and belly fat specifically has a very important metabolic consequence, right? The more muscle mass you have and the less body fat you have, the more metabolically healthy you're going to be, which means that your body is going to process carbs better. You're going to be more insulin sensitive, which means that your body can handle carbs better. You're at a lower risk of type 2 diabetes, which is also very common in Asian genetics too. Like type 2 diabetes is a big thing. And you're also going to dramatically lower your risk of other diseases like high cholesterol, high blood pressure, heart disease, right? And so getting rid of that skinny fat body, aside from just looking absolutely amazing and getting lean, has a lot of implications for health that would be very beneficial to you, right? And I notice for a lot of my clients who are in their 30s, 40s, they start really thinking about these implications as they get into those ages, right? About being there for their family, about the health issues that they see their parents and their relatives deal with. And so it's like if you make the right changes now, when you still can, and you take proactive action, then you can prevent a lot of these health issues from ever happening, right? And if they do happen, you have a much better foundation to deal with them, okay? So what causes the skinny fat physique, and how do you change that to go to lean, right? You have to change a couple things. Number one is you have to change the way you eat, and you have to change the way you train. And I'll break down exactly what that means. You might think like, well, duh, obviously, but there's nuances there, right? The first thing, so let's start with changing the way you eat. What I notice with a lot of skinny fat Asian guys is that their diet is not optimized for being lean and holding onto muscle mass and losing body fat. So in Asian culture, in Asian cuisine, there's a lot of rice and noodles and carbs, right? Which also means that maybe there's not a ton of protein and veggies a lot of times in those diets. It's very like rice and carbs, noodles based dishes, right? So when a lot of Asian guys come to me, they're used to eating that way. But the reason that causes you to be skinny fat is because you're over indexing on carb intake, but you're under indexing on protein intake, which means that your body is going to be less efficient or less able to hold on to muscle tissue, right? And just from like a first principles perspective, if you don't give your body a reason to hold on to muscle tissue by giving it the raw materials it needs, it will use and burn muscle tissue as energy. It will atrophy, right? Meaning it'll decay. And that's just from like a survival perspective, because muscle is mass and it is energetically expensive for your body to hold on to, which is why it prefers to get rid of that first before it even does body fat, right? So the cuisine does have the natural cuisines that we tend to eat as Asians does have a role to play in it, but that doesn't mean that eating Asian food is bad or eating carbs is bad. It means that you just have to be cognizant of the proportions of which you're eating. Okay, so instead of just eating rice noodle dishes, eating the way you grew up, and just having whatever, you want to restructure your meal so that you have a solid portion of protein with those meals. Maybe you reduce the carb portions a little bit and you moderate the portions overall, the calories overall of those meals. Okay. And so a general rule I recommend to my clients is that whenever they eat a meal, I ask them to have about a fist size to a fist size and a half portion of lean protein. Could be sirloin steak, could be chicken breast, chicken thigh, could be pork tenderloin, whatever it is. And then a fist size portion of carbs like rice, noodles, etc. And then some sort of veggie, some sort of fist size portion of veggies for extra fiber to help them stay full and get full faster. Okay, so the first thing you have to change is your diet and like how you approach food. So instead of just and also another thing with this too is that a lot of guys just try to focus on eating healthy, right? And yes, eating healthy is important, but it's only one side of the equation. Just like you should ideally try to eat as healthy as you can, you also need to make sure you're eating the right portions and the right amount of food. So there's what you eat and there's how much you eat. Both the magic is somewhere in the middle, right? You can't just have one or the other, okay? So very first thing is once you change your diet and the way you eat, then you've got that side of it dialed in, okay? And that is the most important part, because if you change the way you work out, which I'll get to next, but you don't change the way you eat, you're still not going to see those changes in your physique, right? And you're still not going to be able to do that. And so the other side of the nutrition piece that is really important from going from skinny fat to lean is which I kind of alluded to earlier is the protein, right? If you're trying to lose body fat and you're trying to get rid of that belly fat that you're holding on to, you will have to enter what's called a calorie deficit, which means that you eat less calories than you burn daily. So there's a deficit there, right? From just a biological perspective, when you enter a calorie deficit, your body has to get the calories and the energy from somewhere, right? Your body has to use energy from somewhere to stay alive and to function properly. And it can pull that energy from a couple places. Number one is body fat. It can convert body fat into energy, and it can also convert muscle tissue into energy. It prefers to use muscle tissue first because, like I said earlier, it is energetically expensive for your body to hold on to muscle, right? So if you don't eat enough protein and you over-index on carb intake, your body is going to bias towards burning muscle instead of body fat. Okay, so that's that, and then you end up in this classic situation where your weight drops, but you don't notice the physical changes, it's because you're losing a lot of muscle tissue, but your body fat is still there. So the proportion, so like instead of losing, 95% body fat, 5% muscle, it's super skewed. It's like 60% muscle, 40% body fat, right? Not the thing that you want. And what actually gets you that lean, toned, athletic look is having muscle tissue underneath your body fat. And then once you lose it, it shows, right? So that's like the nutrition side of it. And if you're curious about specific numbers, it's going to vary person to person, and it depends a lot on your activity level. But for protein specifically, you want to aim for around 0.8 grams to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight daily. So if you're 200 pounds, you want to eat anywhere from 160 to 200 grams of protein per day. That sounds like a lot. I'm sure it sounds like a lot to a lot of you, but you just have to break it up, right? So break it up between meals, snacks. I'd say for most of my clients, I recommend 3 meals, 1 or 2 snacks a day, and that typically gets them to their goal. All right. So that's the nutrition side of it dialed in. And then the second thing you have to change is the way you train, the way you exercise. What most Asian guys do, and what most of us have been led to believe by the mainstream fitness industry, is that cardio is the answer, right? I see this all the time when guys come to me. They almost always try some sort of cardio based approach first, whether it's HIIT classes, Orange Theory, F45, boot camps, or they just do running on the treadmill, because we've been told that like if you want to lose weight or body fat, you have to exercise more. You have to do more exercise, and that is true. And don't get me wrong, having good cardiovascular health is important for sure, right? So getting active, getting your heart rate up sometimes, playing sports, pickleball, tennis, badminton, whatever your thing is important. But if you're over-indexing on that with the goal of losing body fat, it's not going to be effective. Okay, and so just to the point earlier about how your body biases towards burning muscle tissue first, just like you give your body the raw materials it needs, the protein, right? You also have to give your body a reason to hold on to it by training for that specific purpose, training to hold on to muscle, training to build muscle, to bias and shift your body's preferences towards burning body fat instead of muscle. So those are the two factors, right? It's like you got the calorie deficit, the protein goal, and then the type of training you're doing. And so if you want to go from skinny fat to lean, you have to change your preferred method of exercise from cardio and just like burning calories to weightlifting specifically, resistance training, strength building, right? That making that shift is what is going to make the world of a difference for you. Now, you don't have to give up cardio training entirely. Like if you want to play pickleball couple times a week with your in-law or whoever, right? I know a lot of our clients, like they play those things, they play those sports recreationally, just like as a de-stressor or whatever. So that's fine. But then the majority of your exercise time should be spent resistance training if you want to look lean, athletic, and not skinny fat. That's what's going to start changing and shifting the way your body composition looks over time. Okay, and so to the time component as well. You don't need to work out as much as you might expect. If you're used to, a lot of Asian guys I talk to, they're under the impression that they need to work out every day. Oh, I need to like run and do all kinds of stuff every day. I need to do personal training 3 times a week. I need to do F45 2 times a week. It's like you don't have to do all of that, right? All you really need to get started, especially if you haven't done a lot of weight training before and you're like really busy, work schedule, you don't want to live in the gym, is you can start with 3 days a week in the gym, or even home weights if you have those, right? Some of our clients have home gyms. So you can start, I would start with 3 sessions a week, right? And I would challenge you to keep them under 60 minutes. For most of our clients, we have them start with 30 to 45 minutes a session, 3 times a week. And that entire session is focused on resistance training with dumbbells, with barbells, with cables, whatever it is, with the goal of building muscle tissue or stimulating the muscle growth response in your body. Okay. And so that once you start shifting your training, obviously there's like, different plans and stuff like that. For context, for most of our clients who are doing 3 days a week, I typically recommend either a 3-day full body split. So they do full body, full body, full body, which means you work all muscle groups in one session 3 times a week, or a upper body, lower body, full body. So day 1 is upper body, day 2 is lower body, day 3 is full body. So all of those get to work your muscles at least twice a week. Very efficient, very flexible, very, very easy to move around with a busy schedule in case you need to, right? So now you've got that. Now you might be wondering, okay, like outside of just lifting weights, what do I do to stay active then? That's a very good question. What you can do to still get your cardio activity in is maybe you play sports a couple times a week, right? Or if that's not your thing, then you would just aim to increase your overall step count. So I see step count as a good way to measure how active you really are on a week on average, right? And so for as a benchmark, what I suggest for my clients is to aim to get at least 10,000 steps a day. There's no magic number, but 10,000 steps a day would put you in the moderately active zone. And the reason you want to be in that moderately active zone is that as you increase your activity level, you also have more of a calorie budget to eat, and while still being able to lose fat. If you try to achieve your entire calorie deficit through diet, but you're a sloth, right? You sit behind a desk all day for work and then you don't work out, you don't exercise. You're gonna have to eat so few calories to achieve that deficit because your body's not burning extra. And for most guys, that's a little bit harder to sustain, right? Especially if you have an appetite, if you go out on the weekends, if you like enjoying Asian food in general, you wanna get your calorie budget and you wanna get your metabolism revving as high as you possibly can so you can have as much food as possible and still lose fat. That's the sweet spot, right? And so, so accomplishing that kind of 10K steps per day comes down to just walking, taking the stairs, parking further from the office, taking short breaks between work or walking after meals, getting a lot of our clients get walking pads so that they can walk while they work or they walk while they take calls, etc. Right? So the approach that you have to take from going from skinny fat to lean as an Asian guy is completely different. You just have to shift those couple key things, right? How you train, how you eat. And so to recap, instead of thinking like, I'm gonna eat healthy and I'm gonna focus on eating as little as possible, you need to eat the right calories, yes, but you also need to eat the right amount of protein. So think in terms of protein and calories if you wanna achieve that lean physique to fuel your body. With training, instead of thinking of cardio more frequently, think of weight training less frequently, and then think of low intensity, fun ways to get more active and to get your average step count up. If you can get your average step count across the week to 10,000 a day, that's a really good place to start. And you can track that automatically. If you have an Apple Watch or even on your phone, there's a health app, right? If you carry your phone with you when you walk, it'll just automatically track it for you. Okay. And so that's why measuring, having data helps, right? But you can measure that across a longer time frame. Okay. And so to kind of hammer home the food aspects too, because a lot of Asian guys come to me with this issue too. It can be a little bit more difficult to find higher protein Asian foods, especially if you're not used to eating that way growing up, right? But the key is you have to you take your traditional Asian dishes, right, rice noodle based dishes, and you just have to modify them for yourself. Meaning, like we talked about earlier, the fist size. Like a good rule of thumb is just like having a fist size portion of meat at the meals you do eat, right? That's like a very simple rule, and so within the context of like your daily protein goal, you just want to split that up into, let's say, 3 meals and 1 snack. Or if you skip breakfast, it would be 2 meals and 1 snack, or 2 meals and 2 snacks, right? However you split it up, just make sure each meal has around a fist-sized portion of meat. and you'll be fine. A couple examples of good protein sources that are also Asian in nature is like teriyaki chicken. Chicken thigh is pretty good. Sirloin steak, right? Pork tenderloin, lemongrass pork, Vietnamese lemongrass pork is also a really good option. And so think of like all of the grilled lean versions of meat sources you see in your daily Asian cuisine, and just add those to your meals, and then cut back on the rice portions a little bit. Just actually measure it out and just make sure that you're rock solid there. Okay. So that is essentially the blueprint, right? That is how you make the transition. Now, it's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to instantly go from skinny fat to lean in 2 weeks. It is going to take some time. It takes years to build that, but you definitely, like, if you want to bias your body towards losing the right type of weight so you can achieve that outcome, that is how you do it right there. Okay. And so hopefully you guys found this helpful. If you want some, or if you were interested in learning more about like what one-on-one help would look like, kind of building a custom plan with that one-on-one accountability and help to lose anywhere from 20 to 50 plus pounds without giving up your cultural Asian foods, then you can message me the word Asian on Instagram and I'll reach out to you to see if I can help. But if not, hope you enjoy the video and I will see you in the next one. Bye.